What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 4, I think, of Off Program
Yes.
Podcast. And I'm sitting here staring at Travis's arms, and all I could think is if I had those genetics, my arms would look like that too. Might be
But
the biggest bullshit I've ever said so far in the podcast.
potentially, I think it definitely plays a factor, but it's, like genetics and like arm size. There is a genetic component, but there's also a large component of that you can influence and change.
And when you were starting, like, did you think that you had good genetics at the very beginning?
For That's funny you say arms. For arms, I always did, and one of the reasons is because my dad always had big arms. Yes, yeah. So I kind of knew that off the start, and they just grew faster than everything else. So that was a good indication that genetics for growing muscle on my arms were pretty good. But like with that, the genetics term, it gets thrown around so much, right? Which is kind of frustrating because people use it as a cop out for a lot of things. But there is like two camps with it. There's like the genetic portion that you can't influence, and that would be like, muscle shape, for example, like where your insertions are. If you look at like Ronnie Coleman's biceps, for example, and they have the crazy peak, doesn't matter what you do, your biceps just won't peak like that. Or if you look at Chris Bumstead's quads and like the separation and kind of the way all the muscle sits and pops out, like if you weren't born with that, you're just not going to have it. But then there is the other genetic factors which you can influence. For example, like recovery capability, your ability to sleep well. These things that there is like a genetic proclivity to it, but you can also influence that.
And like from my side, like on the arm joke, it's like I always make fun of myself for having small arms. But the thing is like I didn't train biceps for the better part of 10 years because I was a stupid powerlifter that just didn't give a shit about
Oh,
curls.
well, there's your first
And
problem.
it's like I could make the claim that it is just I have bad arm genetics, but it's like holy freaking shit, as soon as I start training them, it's like they're actually kind of starting to grow and obviously don't look like that yet. But if I were to just say that like, oh, I have bad arm genetics, I don't want to train them because I have bad genetics, it's not worth the time. I'm never going to give myself the chance to actually get bigger arms. And
Hmm.
like powerlifting side of things is like, how much utility is there from giant biceps? Probably not a ton. But I mean, looking cool in 30 10 deadlift, it's like, if I can do it, I'd rather just, put a little bit of effort in to actually get some progress going versus not. And I think kind of the point that I want to make is there's so many powerlifters that want to say they have bad genetics and then use that as a reason to not try. And I'm not saying that genetics doesn't have an influence. I think on the performance side, it absolutely will limit how strong you can get, but it doesn't mean that you can't get stronger.
Hmm.
And I don't think that in powerlifting, at least, it's possible to truly hit genetic ceiling.
But even to like hit your genetics, yeah, I'm not sure that it's possible to actually hit a genetic ceiling, but to even get close to it, like it takes so long, and you have to
Yeah.
try so hard for so long.
And like on the did you know you had good genetics when you started? It's like for me, I kind of had an idea. Like my mom's brothers were all pretty big, pretty strong farm workers,
Hmm.
whatever. And like I knew from that, it's like I probably had the ability to get big and strong when I first started out. But I didn't even realize how good my genetics were until I had already tried for 10 years.
Hmm.
And even like right now, I'm reaching a new level of going like, holy shit, it might be better than I ever thought it was. Cause this is the first time in my entire life where not only has training been dialed, but diet's dialed along with it. And it's like I'm building tissue in a massive deficit better than I ever have when I was eating like a fat ass. And
Yeah.
on paper, it doesn't make sense. And obviously bringing drugs back in, making a big difference there. But like I was running drugs for 10 years and never saw this level of growth that I am right now while I'm starving myself. And it's
Right.
just, I wouldn't have found that out unless I tried.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you can't tell if you have this like natural talent until you actually like put the work behind it, for 5, 10 years. And then you'll just excel faster than someone who maybe doesn't have, that natural talent for it.
And even like someone that doesn't have natural talent, like it's going to happen slower, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen.
Hmm.
And it probably will be harder for them, but it doesn't mean they can't get better.
But like I wouldn't be so quick to for anyone to put themselves in a camp of like good or bad genetics, because if you look at like genetic variation distribution, like it's quite standard, like most things are, like it's a bell curve, right? So about 2/3 of the people, statisticians like to say 2/3, so that's probably pretty close, but they have either average genetics or close to average genetics. And then maybe 1 out of 10 person has good genetics or bad genetics, and then maybe 1 out of 100 people have great genetics or really poor genetics. So the odds are you're somewhere near the median, right? Like you're somewhere near the middle. So I wouldn't be so quick to put, anyone into the camp of good or bad genetics. I would just try it for, a long time because you like doing what you're doing, and then see where you end up.
Yeah, and I think what'll surprise people too is if they do try for long enough, is what you can do with average
Yeah.
genes.
Oh
You
yeah.
don't have to be spectacular to make it a long ways. And like, yes, there are the absolute freaks that can get away with stuff and not have to chug as hard as you would to get where they are. But you can beat someone just by doing better than them for longer than them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like my experience in powerlifting, like I can remember there were so many people throughout the years that it was coming easy to them. It was coming easy to them. Numbers were climbing like crazy. They were jacked as shit. And then the sport finally got to the point where, or they got to the point in the sport where they actually had to start trying, where shit got hard. They hit adversity and they just fizzled out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, there's no way that I should have beaten that guy on paper had he stuck around long enough. But because I stuck around and he didn't, bigger total today than they ever hit.
Yeah, because they'd never had to like face adversity before, so they hadn't built the skills necessary to like problem solve and figure out how to move past that.
And like for that, I'd almost argue that for a lot of people that do have above average genetics, it can almost be a disadvantage because if it comes too easy at the beginning, you don't learn to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the other thing too, is like the whole PD conversation. I don't know if I want to get into this too far, but I think like the biggest reason to hold off on that as a powerlifter is that if you don't learn to struggle while you're a natural lifter, you don't learn how to chug through hard sticking points, you don't learn how to break through a plateau, like you're just going to elevate the level that you plateau at by adding drugs. And if all you want to do is get a little bit better, sure, that's sweet. But if you are stronger due to the drugs and you hit that hard plateau, you're just going to hit it harder than you would natural. It can be a hell of a lot more shitty to have to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree completely with that. Who are some of like who are the icons of powerlifting in terms of genetics?
Well, I think like right now, like the freakiest guy that I've ever seen is that Colton Engelbrecht kid from South Africa. He's 275 or competed at 265, hit the biggest total in history ever as 265 pounder.
Yeah.
And the guy that he's early 20s, I'm pretty sure. And it's just, it looks like he's come out of nowhere, but he's someone that's been in it for a very long time, competing since a very young age, clearly focusing on the right shit for a very long time. So it's not like I want to say that it's all genetics, because you cannot do that without trying very hard and chugging through some shitty training sessions, chugging through some nasty stuff. But like that's one of the ones where it's like I can look at that and just say like, oh, it happened so easy for him, blah, 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 blah. It's not fair. But it's like, well, yeah, who cares if it's not fair? That doesn't mean that I can't get better than I am. And what's funny about that is like the guy that had the biggest total ever before Colton, Dan Bell, we trained with him in Florida for 5 years. Like before Colton showed up, like Dan was the icon of just genetic ability, predisposition to being extremely strong in powerlifting. And now it's like seeing like what I thought was the absolute pinnacle of what a human could achieve strength-wise, absolutely getting demolished by someone 150 pounds lighter. It's just like, what the fuck is going on right now?
See, like when I think of that in powerlifting, I think of John Hack. So I spent quite a bit of time with John, and like he's not that big of a guy. Like he should not be moving the numbers he is.
But put it in perspective with Colton, if you're not familiar with him,
I'm not.
He weighs like 40 pounds more than John. Totals 300 pounds more.
Yeah.
And like John is a freak of the freaks as well, but it's like, it's just another level of like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
Because like my brain, when watching John for years, it's like I can comprehend what's going on. Colton is just like, how?
Yeah. Yeah. So seeing that spectacle, do you think that motivates a lot of people and inspires them, or does it like demoralize them potentially from thinking that's like so other?
I think on social media world, there probably is a lot of demoralization, but when I trained with Dan Bell, the biggest thing that I got out of it is it wrapped my head around these giant ass numbers being normal. Because it's like, if I'm spotting him squatting 1,000 pounds every single week, it's like 900 doesn't look that unachievable anymore.
Yeah.
1,000 stops looking like it's a pipe dream and looks like it's something that I actually could work my way towards, just because I got to see it look so light in person over and over again. And I began to understand, like, even if Dan is a giant human whose knees are bigger than my head, it's like, this is what he's doing to set himself up to squat that. If
Yeah.
I can work my way towards doing similar things on accessory movements, doing similar things in terms of my mental preparation, like I don't think that's impossible.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. You understand that it's possible because you've actually seen it.
And it kind of maybe comes back to that whole 4 minute mile conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
Because it's
thinking.
like, thought it was impossible for years. A guy finally does it, then people are just pulling it off. Maybe not regularly, but it starts to happen.
There's kids in high school who have done it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is yeah, pretty crazy. In bodybuilding, are you familiar at all with Lee Priest?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was just looking at this a couple days ago actually. So he was probably the biggest genetic freak ever, right? Like if you look at the way his muscle sits, the way it inserts, like how it pops off his body. So he won nationals in Australia when he was 17 years old, 18 years old, 19 years old. So he won nationals 3 times, and because he was too young, they wouldn't give him a pro card because he couldn't be a professional yet. So then he came to the U.S., or I guess Canada, won the Niagara show, and then became a pro. And that's just like, if you see photos of him when he was like 13, like just when he started weightlifting, it would make a lot of people want to quit. You know, it's just like the most insane thing you'll ever see. So like, that's a big part of the genetic conversation is what do you start with? You know, like if you look at these guys before they even start training, you know, what do they start with? Because there's the kids that'll be, let's say in high school, they have abs, they have 175 pounds, they're 175 pounds, they're lean, then they go on to be in college, they're 250 in good shape, natural, then they become unnatural still in college, and then next thing you know, they're 280 and they're winning USAs or Canadians, winning their pro card. So a lot of like factors go in, but a big indication of your genetics is like what you start with.
Yeah. And
Like you must know a lot of people who are just strong before they started.
yeah, and I think that those people, it's honestly funny because I've worked with a couple kids that like started ridiculously strong and it just like came so like it was just easy to bench 405 for them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like getting that guy to 500
Yeah.
was a pain in the dick because he could get away with so many bad habits at 400
And he doesn't know how he got to 400.
and he doesn't has no clue how he got there. And it's like getting that same guy to 5 was such a painful process because everything that he knew that worked for 4 is just like technique was inefficient as shit. He had absolutely no arms. And it's just like, well, we've got to do all of this hard work if you want to bench more than you are now. Because if you're just pecking it up, like you're never going to be able to finish a really, really, really heavy bench. We don't have the ability just to rock it off the chest and coast.
Yeah.
Like it's just funny to think that like it can be such a advantage, but again, it can be a disadvantage if a guy doesn't have the right headspace on it to do the necessary work to improve no matter what he has.
Yeah. No, if you look at a long enough time frame.
But even like going back to myself, like my first meet, I benched 242 at 270.
Mm-hmm.
Like not good at all.
Yeah.
and that's one of the things where I honestly think that it was a little bit of a blessing to come into the sport with banged up shoulders from motocross, come into the sport like having zero upper body strength at all. Because like motocross, we were like, don't get too big, don't lift weights, don't do this because you get too big, you'll be too heavy.
Yeah.
But it's like starting out with that and having to work as hard as I did to get my bench where it was, like it's made me not only a better bencher but a better coach just because I've had to fight for it. And like coming back from the pack, I'm gonna have to fight even harder for it to get a new PR. And it's like that's exciting for me to know that I have to dig in because I know if I have to dig in, it's gonna be so much more rewarding to actually finally get that big meat bench.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely makes you a better coach, right? Like the people who are personally genetic anomalies, they haven't faced the struggles that a lot of people, a lot of more regular people have with more regular genetics. I was thinking about this, like with dieting, some people, they can eat, go on 1,000 calorie deficit, 16-week diet, every couple weeks do like a high carb day, and that's totally fine for them. But the reality is that doesn't work for a ton of people, right? Like because these genetic anomalies, they maybe don't get the diet fatigue that another person would. So they give them these plans, or like you'll see it with training plans where it's like on paper, okay, this is like optimal, this should work over a long period of time. But the reality is like people aren't robots and they can't just do that. They have feelings, they have cravings, they're emotional. And if I don't want to say easy, but if you've been able to achieve what you've achieved without all the struggle, then you just don't have those problem solving skills, which are, integral for being a good coach.
I'm going to counter that a little bit with my experience with the diet.
Okay.
Because I was that guy that could not handle it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And this cut has been so freaking cool for me because I've been forced to develop better skill with resisting craving,
Mm-hmm.
forced to develop better skill with being okay with diet fatigue, forced to develop better skill with just not going off plan because I had a bad training session. And
Yeah.
like, it sucked. I did screw up in the beginning a ton, but because I kind of decided that, okay, it's possible for someone else to diet this hard, why can't it be possible for me?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just like a light switch where it was just like be a robot and do it. It was a, can I do better every week? Can I do better every week? Can I handle training better? Can I not be tempted to go off plan? And it's built into this insanely cool spot where it's just rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where people are always asking me, like, am I gonna try Ozempic or am I on Ozempic? Am I touching GLPs right now? And the biggest reason I'm not and I don't want to is not that if I did them, like it would be cheating, because obviously PEDs, like that's helping the strength side and the hypertrophy side. But I think that like PEDs are a gateway to let a person work harder in the gym. Whereas like a GLP takes away a little bit of the necessity to struggle. And I think I wouldn't be here where I am if I didn't choose to struggle through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that completely. But like,
Starting out, we need to figure out how to get a guy there.
but the reality is, like, not that many people like have your mindset towards this all. They haven't, had the experiences you've had. They don't have the goals you have. They haven't been in this as long as you have and seen what you have. And just a lot of people won't be able to do that. They just won't. Like, trust as much as like as many people I've worked with and tried these like perfect on paper plans. It's just not. It's not in the cards for a lot of people, not because it isn't possible, but because they don't care about it that much.
Yeah, and I guess that is
You know
the,
what I mean?
yeah, and asshole argument is just like, can I get the sucker to care more about it?
Oh, and trust me, man, that's the camp I'm in. I'm like, you can do this. Just try. Like, try.
Yep.
Really try. Like, don't lie to me or yourself. Just really try. But man, people who they just want to do one show, maybe they're 45. They're like, I want to do a show before I'm 50 and get in the best shape of my life. Whatever.
And you got to make it doable for them to achieve that goal.
Yeah, you want to make them be the best they can be, but you can't make them something they're not.
Yeah, and I think that probably comes a little bit too with the population differences in our coaching. Because like for me, I'm trying to work with guys that want to be as all in as they can be.
Mm-hmm.
So teaching them to be as all in as they can be is the better solution for me.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I agree with that completely, and I see the variation among like the people I work with. Like, probably the largest like percentage of people I work with, which is probably like 60% of them, are males under 30 years old who compete. Those guys, I give them the plan that I would follow.
Yeah.
Right. And they thrive with it. They love it. They love the hard shit. Then the other 40%, which is, a pretty big, percentage, that's not what they want to do.
Yeah. They want to look good. They want to feel okay.
Yeah. They want to look good. They want to get stronger. They want to be confident, all the things that come with, being happier with what you see in the mirror and what you can do in the gym. And you just have to take a different approach with those people. I didn't do lifestyle clients for the longest time because that wasn't what I enjoyed coaching as much. But now I've really come around to it because I've seen a lot of, honestly, like a lot of success stories, and it's pretty cool to see.
And I think like on paper, you could kind of say that it's not as much fun because you're not pushing towards something extreme. Like you're not getting them to look absolutely freaky.
Yeah.
But you are getting them to do something that they probably didn't think was possible with how they were treating it before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, just different goals for different people. Like, trust me, nothing makes me happier than when someone sends me a check and they're like, 2.5 pounds down. They're 8 weeks out from the show. Glutes are starting to come in, just getting jacked, veiny. They're like, I hit a PR on, this week. I did a 10 by 10 on squats. It was crazy. Like, I love that shit. That gets me up in the morning to do this.
Yeah, and with the people where you're kind of having to do like a modified plan to better fit their requirements, abilities, do you think that they could do better than they were if they were to be able to run the full plan? Or do you think it's...
Well, if it's possible for them to run the full plan, but for some people, like, their value structure is different, right? Like they value going out for dinner, 2 to 3 times a week or whatever, or having these, having ice cream with their kid, whatever it is, they value that more than, having, feathered obliques. What they want is they just want visible abs,
Mhm.
and I totally understand that, like we often talk about the extreme side of this because this is what we're in and it's what we like doing. But the value structures are just different for different people. They care about different things. And yeah, I think it's cool either way. Like I said, I'm a bodybuilder through and through, and I love getting people strong and jacked and peeled. But I've definitely, brought more lifestyle type stuff into my life, and it's quite rewarding to do too. To see people, the number one thing I hear is, because I'm big on the progressive overload, the number one thing I hear is, I didn't think I was that strong, or I didn't think I could do this. I never thought I could do this. So then seeing people, look a certain way, do certain things in the gym, feel a certain way, like that stuff's pretty cool to me.
Oh, 100%. And I think like on the progressive overload side, it's like the treating training like a top level powerlifter is probably a lot more achievable for most than treating dieting like a top level bodybuilder.
I'd agree. I've had this discussion with so many powerlifters, and I don't know what I don't know. God, this is gonna piss people off because this is a powerlifting podcast. What do you what do you think overall is harder to do? To be a professional bodybuilder or powerlifter?
Oh, 100% bodybuilding. 100%.
That's what
100%.
that's what most powerlifters said. And the reason I think that is because the diet influences it so much more, which is, 24-hour. And obviously if you want to be the best powerlifter you can be, the diet's super important, right? Fueling yourself and all that. But, if you want to have a muffin with your kid a couple times a week, I don't know if that's affecting your bench PR.
No, not at all.
Whereas in bodybuilding, maybe that might
And
really
like,
impact things.
if you don't care about body composition like I did for many years, it's like that muffin a couple times a week. We might be able to bump that up to a couple packs of muffins a week and do even better on bench.
Every day post workout.
Yep.
Pre and post.
But something funny I heard someone else talking about a few years ago, they were looking at like business owners in bodybuilding versus business owners in powerlifting. And they were kind of talking about how most powerlifters that are trying to run a coaching business absolutely suck at it. And what they related that to is, to be a good bodybuilder, you got to do shit that you don't really want to do over and over and over and over again. But to be a good powerlifter, not a great powerlifter, to just get good, you can kind of just do the shit that you like and it's going to work well enough.
Yeah.
And in business, trying to, grow a coaching roster, trying to make content, trying to do everything that I'm doing, like there's a lot of stuff that when I get up in the morning, it's like, I wish I didn't have to do this. Like the behind the scenes stuff like kills me. Like the having to come up with content ideas, having to, write out scripts, having to figure out shots. Like I wish I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But it's like, if I want to do what I want to do, I have to do that. And it's honestly funny because running on the diet, I am so much lower energy than when I was, a fat guy eating 10,000 calories a day.
Mm-hmm.
But I've honestly gotten more efficient at work just because I'm better at flipping the switch and being like, okay, this has to be done no matter what. So I have to do it if I want to do what I want to do, big picture.
Yeah, I think you just become more efficient overall if you're dieting versus trying to bulk, honestly. And not even just because you spend more time eating when you're bulking. You just seem to be more efficient and get more done in the day.
Well, I think it's like a matter of like brain fog versus like lethargy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a point with it too, right? Like if you're getting to super low body fat or like really low calories,
then it kind of craters.
Yeah, then the workload, gets a bit tougher to manage. But like there's a point, where you're lean, you're eating like a good amount or in a slight deficit. That's when I'm the most productive.
Yeah, and it was just like mind-boggling to me, like even going back to the what can be handled conversation, like last time I dieted like this, or even close to this level, I was useless. But it's just mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like deciding to not let it be a problem, and it becomes an advantage.
Are you hungry a lot right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the best.
Like half the day? How spaced out are your meals in terms of hours?
We're running 5 meals a day, usually trying to hold off my first one till about 10 a.m.
So you're awake a long time.
Yeah. So I'm freaking ravenous by the time I get that first meal.
10 a.m.? Don't you get up at like 5?
Like 4:30 this morning.
So there's a 5-hour gap?
Yep.
Roughly? And you do your fasted cardio?
Yep.
What time?
That was like 4:45. I was on that thing this morning.
So first thing you do out of bed, you do fasted cardio?
Yep.
And then you wait like 4.5 hours?
Yep.
Oh, you're going to be peeled For sure.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
freaking better.
Get some fat burners in there, some caffeine in the morning. Oh, yeah.
But it's like the first meal,
Glutes are coming in.
like what I'm having right now is some salad mix, 180 grams of chicken, and then 10 grams added fat from some avocado.
Yeah.
And it's like I eat that, and it's just like I'm hungrier than
That's
I was. Yeah. And then meal
It's
two
like
is
6 ounces of meat.
yeah.
6 ounces of meat and salad and some oil.
Yeah.
And then when's the next meal?
Usually about noon. And then same thing.
I don't ever want to hear anyone complain about eating low calories anymore.
Then meal 3 is the same thing.
Yeah.
Meal 4, 25 grams
Wait,
of carb.
what was meal 2?
The exact same as meal 1. So same meal 3 times right now.
Okay.
Out of laziness of not wanting to prep different foods.
Okay, so keto until meal 4.
Yeah, meal 4, 25 grams of carbs from cream of rice.
Okay.
Then 50 grams protein from whey.
Okay.
Which the whey concentrate, in case anybody was wondering, because for some reason I'm screwed up and whey concentrate doesn't make me fart, but whey isolate does.
Very strange.
Yeah.
Have you tried hydrolyzed?
Yes, but
Recently? I'm going to bring you some.
yeah?
Yeah.
What's the texture like?
It's smooth. It's not thick. You like
Okay.
thin ones, right? Or
Well,
not thin?
I don't know what, I just like a nice mouthfeel.
I don't know what that means.
It's got to be, I don't know, like smooth.
It's smooth.
Okay.
It's
okay.
smooth.
Yeah.
And it's. So I'm gonna bring you. I'll bring you some next time. We're gonna get Seth on hydrolyzed. HydroPure is gonna be Nutribolic Supplement World Next Athlete. It's gonna be great.
If I start farting, I'm just going to spend the entire training session around you. But anyways, that's meal 4 right now. And then meal 5 is I'll either do chicken and rice for 50 gram protein and then 50 gram carbs for my post,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll just do cream of rice if I'm lazy and want to get to bed fast.
And that's it.
That's it.
What do you weigh?
245 this morning.
Yeah.
So,
So where do you go from there? Are you gonna go lower?
So
Are you losing weight right now?
yeah.
Fast or not really?
So adding PEDs back in, I like sprung up 20 pounds in 3 weeks, but got leaner through that process. So I'm not complaining about that at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of that probably is just intramuscular water more than actual muscle tissue.
Yeah. Increased nitrogen.
But since that stopped, I've been going 2 pounds a week.
Down.
Yeah. And that I do have my high carb day as well on the Saturday. So
Yeah. And how much cardio?
doing 35 minutes 5 times a week right now with the hit.
Okay. Yeah. So you're pretty in it right now.
Yeah.
You're pretty in the.
And I think like on paper that sounds extremely low.
It is.
But,
On
yeah.
paper, yeah.
And there probably isn't too much room to pull out. I think like the plan right now is to keep pushing until August. Like we still could pull more carb out. We still could pull a little bit of the added fat out. It'll suck balls, but we could. There is room.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't, because you're in a performance-based sport, right? So as long as taking away the carbs from the pre and post doesn't.
And like I don't give a shit about performance right now.
Oh, okay.
Like this current instant, like it's holding on shocking,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm doing my best to not care about it just because I know that if I want to have the body composition that's going to let me be the best lifter in the future, I need to just get through this
Mm-hmm.
so I can be in a better spot to rebuild.
Yeah, and the thing with like when you go through this diet phase and you get lean, and then especially add in those extra supplements, you have the ability to stay lean and just add tissue at a relatively efficient rate.
Yeah, and
And you'll get strong fast.
that's the whole plan.
Yeah. No. Okay. No, that's a good plan. I like that.
And I kind of did a mini run of this last year because I started at 325, got down to like 265 by August, then went back up to about 280 for the meet in December.
Mhm.
And like, it's so funny because I was so much fatter back then than I am now,
Yeah.
even though the 15-pound difference. But like I was cratered in performance and kind of trying to figure out the levers again. It was difficult, but ended up hitting all-time PR in December. So it's like, I think I can repeat that process again and just come in with an even better body composition. And then same thing again next year until start looking like Cole.
Yeah. Yeah. Cole's a big dude. No, I like that plan. So if you pulled out carbs, would you take it from the post-workout?
Well, it'll be Justin's discretion.
Yeah.
And knowing
Feel like you
how
will.
he has modified the diet so far, he has been holding on to post-workout the longest.
Yeah. It depends. Like, do you find you get a lot of energy from the pre-workout carbs?
Not really.
No.
It's almost just like I have it in my system and the body's like, let's get excited, burn them all instantly.
Yeah, yes. From like an energy perspective, like it makes the most sense if it's helping your performance a lot to have it in the
Yeah.
pre-workout. But from a recovery perspective, the post-workout ones are definitely ideal, right? Because you eat those carbohydrates, you get that insulin spike, it
Yeah.
shuttles everything into the muscle right when it needs it most post-training.
Yeah, and so I'm feeling he's probably going to leave that in the longest, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because like life would be depressing if I can't have 180 grams of rice after training.
Bro, that's not even a cup.
No.
That's so depressing.
But I think it's like the reason calories have to be so low right now is just a reflection of how I treated it for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Like metabolism wasn't in a good spot when I started this process, so it shouldn't surprise me that it does have to be this cratered, even though I still am not shredded.
Yeah.
But it's just I got to go through it to be able to build back up, so I can have better metabolism, can put better tissue on, make the next cut a little bit less terrible.
Yeah. Is this the leanest you've ever been?
I think I'm approaching that level.
Yeah. Yeah, well, whenever you reach like a new level of leanness, it's you got to dig deep for that.
Yep.
You know, it's the same with whenever you approach a new level of weight, like a new, high weight. You got to dig for it, right?
Yep.
You got to eat. Your body wants to be where it wants to be. So if you want it to change and go, lower than it usually is, you got to work for it, and same with higher.
Yeah, and what's funny too is when these macros first hit, like the first day was like, fuck, I don't know if I can do this. It's like the entire week was kind of like going through my head, going like, I don't know if I can handle this. Like this is so freaking hard. But then it's like once the first week I got through it, it was like I kind of did it.
Right.
It wasn't that bad. I was making it worse in my head than it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And like this week has been,
which is usually the case.
Even though it's the same food, even though I got the new stupid treadmill thing for the cardio to make the cardio harder, like this week's been easier to handle than last week.
Yeah.
Which is kind of making me excited with the thought that I might have to keep digging in until August because I'm still not anywhere near lean enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, you seem to be in a good place with it all. You're in a good headspace too, right? You have your expectations set appropriately, which I think is quite huge, right? Like, it's going to be tough, but you're doing it. So you might as well smile,
And like on that expectation thing, like me previous dieting is I would just nocebo myself into doing so much worse in the gym than I needed to.
Oh, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah.
Like just telling myself that I needed to feel weak because I was hungry. And I had that idea in my head because of past experience. Because past experience, I was dieting like an idiot. I, again, didn't have the right headspace, and training would just go to shit as soon as I got lighter.
But I think it would also be largely from what you would see, right? That's what everyone says.
And everyone in powerlifting too talks about how important it is to be well-fed for training, how important it is. And yes, it is important, but I don't think it has to limit a person to the degree that I at least used to let it limit me to. Because I remember like being in Florida, like my intro was like 3 Snickers bars. don't do this at home. It did build a big
powerlifters, man.
It did build a big total, but like if I didn't have my 3 Snickers bars and like I was like hungry through a back separate squat session, it's like that squat session wouldn't go well. So I was like, okay, Snickers bars feel full, do good. And now it's just like, what a fucking idiot.
But I mean, you have to do those things, right? Like you have to do all that crazy shit to see if it works, so you have that experience. And who didn't go through it all? Like, why were you doing that? Because you were just so desperate to be good. You're like, I'll do whatever it takes. 3 Snickers bars intro? Fuck yeah. Let's see if it works. Other people aren't doing this. And
what I wish is that if I could know what I knew now in terms of performance while dieting, it's like even this last cut, it's like if I started out the process when I was 325 with the same mindset I had now, it's like how much less weak could I be in my current shoes if I just didn't let myself slack off on training? And that's kind of like haunting me a little bit. But like that hauntingness is giving me more reason to dig in harder and like fight for that progression and see if I can, PR the little stuff. And as I've been PRing the little stuff, it's like the bigger stuff's building again, and it's getting more and more fun.
Yeah. Do you remember Cali Muscle? Do you remember that?
Yes.
That guy? So when I was 18 was the first time I hit 250 pounds. I wanted to be 250 pounds for a while. I had already done a few shows at that point. And that's when like Rich Piana, Cali Muscle, they were like big on YouTube, right? Callum Von Moger shortly after. And Cali, he'd always talk about how he'd eat top ramen and tuna, he called it. And it was like a Mr. Noodles pack.
Yep.
And a can of tuna. So for a full it was like 16-week bulk, I ate that 6 times a day. That's literally all I ate. Each meal would be 2 packs of Mr. Noodles and 1 can of tuna, and then protein after the gym. I just had that 6 times a day for like 4 months. I blew up from like 45 pounds. It was awesome. Don't recommend it. So my blood pressure was through the roof from all the sodium packs. but it worked. It got me big. I wouldn't recommend it, and I can explain to people why now when they, ask me about doing all these crazy foods to just get huge. And it's because I have that like actual experience, just like you with the Snickers bars, right? It's like we did that stuff because we wanted it so bad, and we do whatever it took, and we thought that was the best route at that point in time, based on the information we had.
And even like the utility of the Snickers bars, like if I have a client that has, super busy physical job, he doesn't always have time to get a meal in before training.
Yeah.
Like I'll actually tell him, like, just go to the gas station, get a chocolate bar and a Gatorade and a muscle milk. Just get that easy food in before you go to the gym, just so you have something.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's not the strategy that we want to be employing full time. So our diet just becomes nothing but Snickers bars, like my asshole diet was.
Yeah.
But it's like just having something can be better than nothing if they are in a position where they do need to be pushing as hard as they can.
I'd agree with that. But with the 3 Snickers bars intra workout, I don't think there's
Well,
like,
that was just being fat.
I don't think there's
That was
any
just being
argument for
fat.
having more than 1 intra. Like what's in that? 60 grams of sugar?
Yep.
Bro, you don't need more than 60.
And what I also want to get that, because like that's the easier solution, is just to like give him something that he can get food in if he is underprepared for the day.
And that's better than nothing, 100%.
And the harder solution is getting them again to understand what I'm learning is that you can feel like shit and still do half decent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I was saying the other podcast, I was always the strongest in my life at 4 weeks out of a show. Like that 4 to 8 week mark, always the strongest. And I was lean. Like,
yep.
Lean, quite lean.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures. Like you're
Yeah, man. Like that's where
decently shredded.
Yeah, I'm always that sounds bad. But I'm always quite lean, and that's where I feel best. I didn't like being big. I wasn't as heavy as you, but I was, waking up at 3:14 when I was like 22 years old and just eating all the time. And I didn't like that feeling. It was also a lot of it like mental. Like I didn't like how I looked. Sure, I was huge, but like I didn't like how I looked. I was always a bodybuilder. I always liked like seeing these, physiques on stage, these guys looking jacked and ripped. I didn't like being fat. So that I think is something you need to consider as well. Like the emotional or the mental impact and how you view yourself. If you don't like how you look and you're trying really hard to do this thing, I think it would be quite demotivating if you don't even like, how you look. You don't enjoy the process at all. So that's why I always stay pretty lean now. And plus, like after spending all that time, eating all that food, and I have like a decent amount of muscle in terms of like, my weight and my height, I would have to like try to get fat now. I just eat comfortably. I have 5 meals a day. Most of them are 8 ounces of meat and a cup of rice, or like a cup of oats, 2 scoops of whey isolate. It's like that. I'm never hungry. I feel great.
Yep.
Training's good. Get good pumps.
That's my dream.
Yeah. Well, you'll get there because you're doing this now.
And the whole like motivation too is like looking at what my brother's done with his diet, with his training. Is like this asshole has to have like 1,500 grams of carbs a day to gain weight in the off season.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, if I could get myself to the point where my metabolism looks like that, like it wouldn't be easy. I'd probably again eventually start hating food like you experienced on the bulk. But I would way rather have that and look like that than, be 325 pounds out of breath, back pumps, calf pumps, everything pumped, struggling to walk to the mailbox.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be harder to get there, but I think that like that's going to be the better hard for me to choose if I want to get where I want to get. Mm-hmm. And like being the fat guy, like you were saying, it was I will do whatever it takes to be the best lifter that I can be. And I think the problem with the all-in mindset in powerlifting is so many people are presenting it in just an ass backwards way. Because I don't think that how a lot of lifters treat all-in is the most productive. Because like in powerlifting, you have the old West Side stories, the guys sleeping in their car to train at the gym and just being a bouncer because it's the only job that they could hold down and still train. And it's like, well, maybe if you had a mattress that was comfortable to sleep on, maybe if you had a more steady job income where you didn't have to fight people at a bar at 2 a.m, your training could be better. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yes, in a way,
sure,
they are doing whatever it takes, but they could do harder shit that might be a little bit more strenuous on them and do better. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm discovering now is because I was that guy where like my early 20s, like my life was a complete fucking shit show. And I was stressed out of my gourd about money. I was stressed about everything. Like life sucked. Mm-hmm. And going back to school, getting education, setting myself up with a career, it's like I have to do so much more work through the day but it's even the stuff that I don't like, it becomes rewarding. And because I have a more steady home life, because I have a supportive relationship, because I have all of these things that, lifters want to say that they can't do stuff with their wife because it'll get in the way of training. It's like, well, doing stuff with Miana lets me train better, lets me have a little bit of a mental break. It lets me do my job as a lifter better just because I'm calm and relaxed. And
Yeah, and like living in that frame, that's kind of like a depressing life, really, right? Like, okay, let's think about this. When do you actually grow, right? It's when you're outside of the gym, when you're recovering, you're in a restful state, you're not stressed, you're not anxious, right? Like that's best case scenario for growth. And then when you're in the gym, you're in that like fight or flight mode. That's when you can really turn on, which kind of leads back to our genetic thing. Like some people have a better genetic propensity to be able to like turn it on in the gym, and then when they leave the gym, totally turn it off, right? You mostly notice this in like the skinny science-based crowd, right? When they're outside of the gym, like fucking stressed, or like, oh, got to figure out what I'm doing in the gym tomorrow. Got to figure out what I'm eating, all this jazz. But no, where I'm going with that is like, yeah, if you improve your quality of life outside of the gym, that absolutely improves what you're doing in the gym.
yeah, because going back to like 20-year-old Seth, like I thought I was training as hard as I could. I thought I was
Mm.
doing everything possible. But like
And you probably were training as hard as you can.
I was training as hard as I could. But now because I'm not a stress ball all freaking day long, I'm able to better recover. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing cardio, I'm in better shape. I'm able to better recover because I've just built up tissue tolerance over the years. I can push harder on everything across the board and not catch dings.
Mm-hmm.
And like 30-year-old Seth could absolutely whoop 20-year-old Seth's ass
Yeah.
in training.
Yeah. Yeah. And he probably enjoys his life more,
100%.
which I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that kind of one of the biggest things?
Yeah. And
I understand going through this, a pain period or over a period of time doing something you do not like doing to get to a certain place, but you have to have some joy, or else what the fuck are you doing, man?
and it's like enjoying, and again, doing what I am now. If I were to just, live a day like I did in my early 20s, it might be a more fun day, you know? But right now, being more disciplined, doing what I am doing, both work wise, training wise, sleep wise, everything, getting up early, cardio, it does suck a little bit more on the day. But it's like because I understand that doing the shit that sucks is going to make me better, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the most satisfaction you can get is like completing tasks towards an end goal, like accomplishing things. I think that's more fun than anything.
And kind of how I'm even framing it too is like achieving the goal isn't even the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had so many meets where it's like an insanely good day, and I feel that it's like it's everything went right, huge total, giant PRs, but then you feel empty afterwards
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, what was this all for?
Yeah, yeah.
And what I'm kind of trying to frame it now is it's like, well, what it's for is the process. Like what it's for is going through it, and if I can be more cognizant of understanding that doing the shit that I am right now is for me, and I'm working on me, and I'm working on developing better resiliency, developing better discipline, the end day when the really big meet comes, it feels a lot less empty.
Mm-hmm. Because it's just like another step in the process, right?
Yeah. And going back to that, how I used to live was a little bit of a depressing state. I think the mess that a lot of lifters get in is that their training is fueled by so much being pissed off at the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that because I was absolutely there. Like
Yeah.
anger, hatred for everything, like it made me push harder in the gym. And the biggest kind of struggle I had when I did get my life together better is I had less to be pissed off about, and it was harder to flip the switch in the gym.
Yeah.
And kind of what I figured out to better manage that is when I'm approaching the bar, like everyone thinks I'm still pissed off. Like they see me approaching the bar, they think I'm lifting so fucking furious, but I'm just like excited. Like I'm just
Yeah.
like go to that bar, like grateful that I get to do this, grateful that I get to smash the weight. And like that gets me more revved up than anger ever could.
Yeah, injury free, right? Because you've had those injuries too, so it makes you appreciate just being able to do it.
100%. So like it's approaching the bar with gratitude is so much better than just anger.
Yeah, and I see that a ton in bodybuilding too, right? Like you use the anger to fuel you, and then that kind of can. Some people are good at like keeping it just to training, but a lot of people it like kind of pulls their life, in a negative direction, and then
Everything gets miserable, everything falls apart.
yeah, because you just start like hating the world for being in the position you're in, and that can be a tough spot to get out of if you don't have a lot positive in your life, for a lot of good influences around you, you know?
Yeah, because I remember like going to the gym and having to like sit in my truck for like 20 minutes just because I was so like not only like stressed about life, but like stressed about training because I knew that I'd go in the gym and get pissed off at the bar, and so you leave the session feeling worse than you walked in, and it's not a
Yeah.
fun place to be.
Especially if you missed the lift.
And
How
it gets
pissed are you gonna be
even freak.
then?
Yeah, because like you go up to a bar like thinking about how like every single person that's ever annoyed you, every single person you think that's done you wrong, and it's like you miss that lift. It's like holy shit, you're in a bad spot after that.
Oh yeah, fucking watch out drywall. Like
Yup,
you're
yup,
smashing some things.
yup.
Yeah, no, for sure. But no, to kind of sum that up, yeah, like improving your quality of life outside the gym is just gonna make everything better. It's gonna make your lifts better. It's gonna make your life more enjoyable, and that's big.
And it's gonna let you work harder.
It will let you work harder, and it'll let you get more out of what you're doing. You know, you get a better response from the stimulus that you're putting in.
Yeah, because another quote I wanted to bring up that I thought was really good in a podcast I heard the other day is working smarter, not harder, only works if you're competing with stupid people.
Yes.
Because I think like in powerlifting, like dumb meathead stereotype, like powerlifting is so brutally simple to get very strong. Like all you literally need to do is put more weight on the bar week after week at a rate that you can recover from, and you're going to get stronger.
Yeah.
So all of these like optimizer nerds, like they're going about it the wrong way. Because in my head, it's like the reason I'm trying to make my training more optimal, the reason I'm trying to dial in my periodization strategy, the real reason I'm trying to dial in my movement selection is so that I can work harder than the guy that is just doing dumb work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's not that like I'm trying to train smarter just so that I can do less, get away with less. I'm trying to train smarter so I can do more. And the smarter my training's got, like everything can get pushed harder just because I'm not as cooked, just because my movement selection is more precise for my weak points, just because I'm just doing the right things. It's just this cascading effect of being able to crank harder, get in better shape. And it's just like,
So it's work smarter so you can work harder.
100%.
Yeah.
And I don't know, getting on the hypertrophy nerd optimizer kick.
Yeah. See, this is why the nerds get mad.
Like I
at
think
you.
like talking to you like ruined my Instagram algorithm.
Sorry.
Because like if I scroll through Instagram, it's like every third reel is some dude doing those stupid fucking lat flaps, and it's just like,
Oh, you get those?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't spend too much time thinking about them. It just makes you mad.
And I think like the funniest thing about like the hypertrophy influencer circle or the hypertrophy optimizer influencer circle is like I see one guy doing the thing, and it's like there's 17 other of them just like making the exact same fucking reel, and it's like
Same words. Like my issue with it all is that no one like big does it.
yeah.
Like period. It's or yeah, that's it. That's it. And what I'm saying.
Yep.
But no, it's like you can't even find like a single point of proof. You know, like the closest guy you have in like the bodybuilding space is like a John Jewett. And okay, like that's one pro who's like kind of like that out of I don't know how many pros there are, tens of thousands, you know? But you know what is common among the vast majority of them is they all just train like really hard with okay form.
Yep.
That's the key word, okay form. When I make people's plans, I tell them to like for progressive overload, progress it with okay form. I never say perfect form. I don't want you at perfect form. I don't want you to overthink your form. I want you to get it locked down when the weight's light, and then just don't change it as you progress
Yeah,
up.
keep the standard.
Yeah, keep it okay. I don't want it perfect. We don't need to use pink dumbbells. We need to have an actual load. And yeah, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, but I'm not like, you know, I don't need like a protractor to like look at a lift.
No. And like even on powerlifting technique, it's like technique absolutely does matter. And my whole philosophy on powerlifting technique is that we just don't want anything changing shape that should be transmitting force. So it's like your torso on a squat, like your legs are producing the force, your torso is transmitting force to the bar. If your torso is crumpling, we don't have a efficient means to transport force from the legs up to the barbell. So we just need to make sure the torso is locked down.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is in check, like it's going to be more than workable. And yes, obviously we can refine positioning underneath that to make it even more efficient. But number one priority is just get your bracing in check on squats, and then everything underneath it should work better.
And kind of the underlying thing with all that is, or the idea or the goal is that, you know, for bench press, you're using your chest to progress the lift, right? Like as long as you're not changing things to get like a mechanical advantage, then you're still progressing the bench press. You know, as long as like the mechanics of it don't change, as long as you don't start using different muscles. Fuck, see, it's different in powerlifting, man, because you're just trying to.
You're trying
The
to
goal
move the
is to
weight.
move the
Yeah.
bar.
Yeah.
Whereas, like when I talk about bench press,
You're trying
in
to
my
contract
head,
chest.
I'm saying, how do we build the biggest chest?
Yep.
You know, it's we want to progress the chest movement. So you don't want a mechanical advantage. You don't want to start, you know, using more triceps or using more front delts or whatever, or, you know, balancing the bar or changing your tempo. You want to keep all that the same. Just progress the chest. We don't want to progress how fast you do the rep. You know, we don't want to progress how long the rest time was before you did the set. We want to progress the movement in the exact same situation under the exact same circumstances as the week before. Because if you keep doing that week over week over week, the recovery's there, you're eating, you're sleeping, your training's like properly set up, the exercises, the volume. If all that's in check, your chest will grow. And if you do that over enough weeks, you have enough good weeks in a row, you actually get somewhere. And you do that until it doesn't work. When it doesn't work, okay, cool. We're doing a hammer strength chest press now. Get rid of barbell.
And I think the only thing that I changed to make that apply exactly for powerlifting is just swap. We're doing everything the same with the goal of progressing chest to we're doing everything the same with the goal of progressing bench.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're probably saying the same thing there.
And it's like the silly thing powerlifting do, like you're talking about with like the tempo and the bouncing and the whatever. It's like so many guys when the bar gets heavy, they just stop pausing in training. It's like, you know, you got to pause on meet day, so just make sure everything's paused to the exact same standard you need to do on meet day. You're not going to get surprised.
Yeah, and you did one more rep than you did last week, but guess what? You didn't pause. It's not even the same lift. You didn't even
Yeah, it doesn't count.
You didn't even do a bench press. I don't know what that was, man. It was a bounce press, maybe.
And the thing that like I hate the most about bench technique is I'm not anti-sinking. I'm anti-sinking out of tension. Because like there's guys, I got one of my guys, Mirko, that sinks his benches, but he does a freaking beautiful job of it because when his bar's on his chest, yes, he is letting the bar go into the chest. Yes, he does have a sink, but he's pulling down and trying to keep the chest tall against that bar's resistance. He's able to fire off with so much force. And then you get the guys that they just like crater into their chest. They try to heave it off with leg drive. And it's like the bottom end of your bench is weak when you get to a max effort lift because you're not ever training the bottom end of your bench. It's like if we just make it harder in the short term so that you can actually have bottom end on under a third attempt weight, like it's going to go way better. You're not going to be at risk of getting up and down. You're not going to get risk of being called for sinking and heaving. And it's just like make the shit harder on where you need it to be harder and it's going to get better.
Yeah, and that's where you need to do the hard shit, right? It's in the training leading up to the meet. You know, that's where you want to do the things that you're going to fail at 100 times before you finally get it right. Like, that's what the training's for. So then on meet day, you don't fuck up the bottom bit of it, right?
Yeah.
Like you're doing your presses properly through training, or you're doing, you know, the correct, you know, exercises or techniques to improve that like bottom range of the press.
And if a guy like actually learns how to use his upper back to control a pause, like pausing, I can pause more than I can TNG. Just because I'm so good at pulling at attention and like using my upper back to give myself more pec tension, holding hard, supporting the bar on the bottom of my lats. It's just like, if we can get a guy to that point where he's like doing the hard stuff to the point where it does get better, it's such a cool spot to be.
Oh, this just came to mind. I was talking to a powerlifter about this a couple days ago. We were talking about leg drive in a bench press.
Yep.
And I wonder what your thoughts were on this. Do you remember, is it Scott Mendelson?
Yep.
And he tore his quad doing that bench press. Remember that? It was like a world record bench press or something.
Yeah, Mendelson, I don't know.
But anyways, like
Yeah.
like a guy tearing his quad doing a bench press.
Yep.
What do you think about that? Do you see it happening?
So leg drive, important. Quad tension, important. But I think like with like Scott's bench press and like what's happening with leg drive, the goal of leg drive isn't to try to like heave the bar on momentum. The goal with leg drive is to hold up your arch from the bottom. So if you're a guy that is benching 1,000+ pounds in a bench shirt and like the 1,000+ pounds is pushing the shirt into your chest, you need a shit ton of leg tension to hold that up.
Right.
So like
yeah.
possible, yes, but probably should be doing better leg work to get more resiliency so we're not ripping our quad off with leg drive.
Yeah. I just thought that was a crazy example though to like show that, because you know the majority of people don't think a quad has anything to do with a bench press.
Yeah, and I've made a couple leg drive reels, and I always get shit on by dudes in the comments being like, if you need to use your legs, it's not a bench press, blah, 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 blah. You're not growing your chest optimally because you're using your legs. But it's like, if I have a stable platform to contract my pecs from, my pecs are going to be able to contract harder. Like the legs aren't pushing the bar, the legs are just holding up the rib cage so the pecs can do more efficient work.
But the issue is kind of in the comment you just said there. He said that you won't be able to grow your chest. Your powerlifting, the goal is to grow your bench,
Exactly.
right? So,
But even then, it's like if a bodybuilder were to have a more stable platform, they
Mhm.
should be able to contract harder, get more mechanical tension, have better chest growth.
Oh yeah, like I know what you're talking about. Like I
Yep.
use leg drive
Yep.
for any of my presses
Yep.
because I just feel sturdier. I feel like when I'm doing like a bench press, for example, my goal is to get everything tight, very
Yep.
tight.
Yep.
So the only thing that needs to move is this. Nothing else moves. Everything's locked in because I am like so meticulous with the environment around my lifts that I'm trying to progress to keep it as similar to the week prior as possible to get real progression in the muscle and not have any like, mechanical changes or like any outside factors. Like I'm quite meticulous with like how my lifts. I'm a bit more relaxed now because I'm not in the bodybuilding as much as I used to when I was competing. But like it's everything's standardized.
Yeah, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, well that's what progressive overload is.
What's your take on, because I got more evidence-based science nerd lifting
Great.
stuff.
Love it.
I've been seeing the always press with a flat back because it's better for chest growth take.
Oh.
Have you seen too much of that?
No, I haven't seen that yet. Thankfully, I think you're more in the science
Well,
algorithm than
yeah,
me.
but yeah, it's getting my algorithm's getting ruined. But
Yeah.
so like the
No,
whole. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, based on like what you just said, my thoughts process was always like I try and pinch my shoulder blades back to get the largest stretch in the chest as possible, just so because then you can get a larger range of motion in terms of how much the chest is stretching and then contracting. And then I feel like if your back was flat, you're gonna use way more front delt.
Yeah,
That
definitely mechanically. And like classic powerlifting take on bench press upper back setting was just to retract as freaking hard as you can,
to shorten the distance,
to shorten the distance, to
right?
get to the chest as high as possible.
But your chest
And
is also more stretched in that position.
yes, but I can understand their argument because if we're looking at like shoulder blade mechanics in relation to pec action,
Mm-hmm.
if we do have protraction, pec can contract harder in this position. Just because the insertion angle is going to be more favorable for creating leverage on the humerus when we're up here.
Yeah, no, I see
So
that.
I understand for the top end, but for the bottom end, the insertion angle, if we are protracted in the bottom of the bench, like that's a pretty damn flat angle from the pec tendon to the humerus. So you're not going to have a ton of leverage over humerus with pec in the bottom. So what I coach for powerlifting is I just ignore retraction altogether. I don't tell people to retract. I don't want shoulders pinched together.
Mm-hmm.
All I want to do is focus on trying to pin the shoulder blades as far down the back as possible, almost try to like roll around so we're getting serratus involved to create a little bit of protraction. So that at the top, we have a really good insertion angle at the humerus. And then at the bottom, if we are creating that depression, we're naturally going to allow a little bit of scap travel, a little bit of retraction as we're lowering to get a better pec angle at the bottom. And then we just protract through the top so we can maximize pec contraction contribution.
Yeah, and I certainly understand that. So it kind of sounds like the best case scenario would be like having your shoulder blades pull back to the bottom of the lift and then like kind of bringing them forward or at least to flat as you press through. And like that's what I do with my flies.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that if we just
that.
focus on depression through the bench rather than trying to coordinate protraction and retraction, if we just keep the depression, keep low traps on, it's like the scaps are going to go where they need to go to be efficient anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't know, the nerds that are saying flat back only, it's like, well, you're missing the point. It's like if you're trying to grow pec, let scap travel because protraction, pec action are integrated. And if we allow protraction as we're actively pressing with pec, it's like you're gonna be able to contract harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
no, I'd agree with that.
Nerds are gonna nerd.
Yeah, I think that might be more on the powerlifting nerd side of things. We just get like single arm like lateral flies, single arm cable lateral flies on an incline bench.
Yeah, that worth doing? Is that the secret?
And I didn't see Jay Cutler do it.
No. But then I could argue that Jay was only able to train like that because of his genetics. If he trained smarter, he could have been bigger.
Could have been bigger.
Smarter.
See, that's an interesting thing to say about people who are the best at what they do. If they did it my way, that they would be better.
And
that I don't like the premise of it.
I think it kind of comes back to like I can relate training with Dan Bell. Because there were a lot of holes that he probably could have closed. There are a lot of things he probably could have done better, but he was able to do what he did because of his genetic base. But then like all I can think right now is like with Colton coming around is like if Dan figured that shit out went through the uncomfortable stuff a little bit more, like could it be total 27? Could it be total 28?
Ye- Yeah. Okay, so
And I think
that's a
that,
loaded
and
comment you
I
just
think the
said here.
difference between what I said on Jay versus talking about that
Hmm.
is that with Dan Bell, it wasn't like he needed to do the lat flap. It was like he needed to train lats more often. He just needed to train the
Yeah.
thing. He just needed to eat food that didn't come from a gas station. He just needed to
Yeah.
not drink 30 beers a night.
Yeah. See that? Yeah. That's pretty like obvious, like probable hole
Yep.
in the whole thing. But okay, we'll go on with like the Jay Cutler thing. And so I said using a single arm cable lateral on an incline bench, and the reason for that largely, I think the biggest reason is that you just get a better mind muscle connection. It's very easy to feel just the side of your delt with that. So then the genetic thing does come into it with Jay Cutler, because Jay would have such a better mind muscle connection with every movement than the vast majority of people, that he can do dumbbell lateral flies, feel his side delt just as much, and get way more load. And the beautiful thing about like lateral raises, for example, is you can go really far into them. You can do 10 full ones, then you can do 15 half ones. And that's just going to absolutely smoke your shoulder under quite a bit of load. So that would be my specific argument for that specific note.
But I would even say that like that's more skill than, so maybe yes,
Some,
genetics to develop to have that at the beginning, but I think it's skill to learn to feel it.
yeah, I think it would be both.
And because I can think about all of the, I was going to say all of the muscles that I have that are well developed, when nothing is really all that well developed on me right now. But it's like the ones that are at least better for my sad powerlifter physique. Those are the ones that I have the best connection to, but they're also the ones that I spent the most time training.
Mm-hmm.
Like the shit that I'm really good at contracting, really good at flexing, it's what I've prioritized in training because those are the big movers to powerlifting movements. And the delt thing is like, I didn't really train delts for years. And I hated training delts because my delts sucked. So I just kept not training them because they sucked and it wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
But recently making myself train more delts, like I couldn't contract my lateral raise worth of shit. But it's like just doing them twice a week for a year straight now, I'm actually starting to feel it working, like feel it squeezing. And it's, as I'm feeling it squeezing, it's not only becoming more fun, but I'm getting better growth and progressing better. And it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just because I developed the skill of actually flexing it.
And you will develop any skill that you work on, right? Like absolutely anything. That's kind of like the, nature and nurture. Like the chick, is it the chicken or the egg that came first, right? Like did these genetic phenomenons, or these phenomenons, sorry, did they have the ability to have a very good mind muscle connection right off the start? I think I know a lot of them did. A lot of them talk about that. Like there's any movement they do, like if you can just see the muscles contracting, then you can absolutely get better at it over time. And that goes back to kind of where your starting place is. Some people started in a better spot than others. Everyone can improve. Every single person can improve at absolutely anything, right? But there are different starting points, and that's the reality of it. But a frame that you can't get in is using that as a reason to not try, because look at Jay. He started training when he was 18. He got a gym membership. He would damn near like win Canadian nationals before he started working out.
Mm-hmm.
That's just that's the hand he was dealt. That was his starting point.
Yeah, and I think
But
it's,
but then the issue is that I'm 18 years old. I don't look like Jay Cutler, and I'm like, oh well, I'm not going to try because look at this guy, and there's just a dangerous frame to get into, and that bleeds into like all areas of life. It's you can progress anything you put time into. Yeah, some people are in a different vehicle that'll excel faster than others, sure, but you can get a hell of a lot further than where you are right now.
yeah, because top end might be limited,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that you can't elevate where your top end is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And yeah. Then one last thing on genetics, because I want to touch on one other. There's so many of these, but like with the genetics thing, there's like genetic proclivity to injury, right? Some people are just like fragile motherfuckers, right? They're breaking all the time.
Yep.
Which again, that's a genetic factor that you can influence by having proper training, rest, stretching, all that jazz. But some people are just more prone to injury, right? Like look at Branch Warren's training, the bodybuilder. Branch?
Yep.
Yeah, he should have snapped everything on his body already, right? And then there's a genetic relationship in terms of how fast you can recover from things, right? That's something you can influence by what you're doing in terms of your food, your exercise selection, your recovery, or your sleep, and what you're doing outside of the gym. At the end of the day, some people just recover faster than others, right? Like Ronnie Coleman, six, 7, 800-pound squats twice a week. He'd do push-pull legs with heavy weight twice a week, and he could recover from that. And then you have someone like, Dorian Yates, who would train everything, once a week. He trained 4 days a week, 3 days off, train everything once a week because, his recovery capabilities weren't like Ronnie's. You can influence that. You can improve your recovery. But there is genetic components to all of this. And just, the underlying thing that I and everyone just needs to remember is it doesn't matter what they are. You can improve on what you are, and you can get a lot closer to what you want to be, where you want to be. You just spend time and really work at it.
I had an old school powerlifter block me on Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I made a post about building tissue tolerance. Mm-hmm. And he commented something about how some people are just genetically more brittle than others and you can't do anything about that. And it's like, what I said back to him was like, dude, you just didn't train in a way that let you build the tissue tolerance. Therefore, you broke all the time. And I can say that because I was the guy that thought I was brittle. I was the guy that was tweaking shit all the freaking time. And the only reason that I'm good at what I do on the rehab side of things is because I figured out how to just make muscles more resilient over time. Mm-hmm. And someone might be saying like, oh, well, you blew your pec off. Well, yeah, because I got cocky and put something on the bar that I shouldn't have. The pec is doing pretty damn good now. And the big thing with powerlifters that are tagging injuries all the time is, number one, if you're trying to do stuff that you don't have the base to support, that's going to elevate injury risk. Mm-hmm. Number two, if you aren't doing anything to build the base and you're just avoiding the vulnerable positions, that's going to elevate injury risk because you aren't strong in that area that is weak. Mm-hmm. So if we get a guy that is constantly tweaking his quad just to do some slower tempo, higher rep, low load quad work where the goal is accessing stretch, getting that collagen proliferation to happen, he is going to make that quad more durable. Mm-hmm. And we progress load with that, we progress load with that, we progress load with that, and then all of a sudden he's going to be able to push on stuff heavy and that quad's going to stop tweaking. Mm-hmm. And I can list, because I've had, grade 2 strains pretty much on every single body part when I was training like an idiot.
Yeah.
And all of those, it's like, it would just happen. And then I'd kind of get back to training without building the base back up. And it would happen again. And it would just be this so freaking frustrating process until I just realized that injury is just a matter of task versus preparedness. And if you aren't prepared for the task, no shit, you're going to get hurt. So elevate preparedness rather than avoiding the task.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said, that's a genetic factor that you can improve upon. Right. But I mean, there is still going to be the kid, the 8th grade girl who, tears her hamstring at every other volleyball practice, right? And there's a kid in 8th grade who can do 1 rep maxes on, barbell curls, who won't tear anything. So there's both is what I'm saying, right?
Yep. Because again, 100% there is genetic influence in terms of tissue quality, but again, it's just do something to improve it.
Exactly.
Don't use it as a reason to not try. It's use it as a reason to figure out how to try better, try smarter, so that you can work harder without blowing your shit up.
Yeah. And then you know how to teach other people how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you got to do it.
What are we at on time? Can't even see.
I feel like we're over an hour.
Yeah? Shut her down?
Shut her down.
It's a good point to end on. So, work smarter so that you can work harder and you will get better.